Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're going to be painting again today. Oh, I apologize. Give me 1 second here. See where that feedback is coming from, but I think I got it. So again, thanks for joining today. I'm going to be kind of painting again through the oil painting that I've been working on. I'll kind of show you guys here a little bit with the camera. So I worked on the feet and the pants yesterday. And before that, I was working on the face, the portrait here. And so I like to bounce around the canvas a little bit so that way I get some consistency, get all kinds of different things going. And so what I'm going to be doing is bouncing around again, but I'm going to be working on this area here on the upper part of the jeans. And I'm going to be working down into that. And then I'll probably bounce around to some of the areas. But if you've watched any of this, I love the comments. I love the questions. Come by and say hello. Ask anything that you want to ask. I'm going to kind of work through this, kind of paint as we join. As you join, please, feel free to comment or ask questions. Let me know you're here. But I've got my palette set up again. I'm using raw umber and titanium white. This is an oil painting, and I've done it's not a full, an imprimatura is doing a single tone kind of value study or placement underneath. I didn't really do that. I've got an underwash or an underpainting, a coating of yellow ochre on the canvas that you can see. That way I'm not working straight from white. That way I'm working on a toned background, which allows me to kind of push and pull those values a little bit more. So I'm working from there, and I've already gotten a little bit of my, and I'm probably saying this incorrectly because my French is not very good. I should ask my cousin and my aunt who are fluent in French. I think it's grisaille, but grisaille or grisaille, I think is the proper French, which just is the gray tone. So that's what the gray is here. I apologize to all my French speakers who are, it's a beautiful language. I'm from Kentucky. I struggle with it. But as you can see, this is what some of that looks like. Obviously, you're getting a little bit of an angle from the camera movement here, so you're not seeing it directly in place. But this is the area that I'm going to be working on today. And so I'm glad that you joined. Hopefully, you're jumping in and going to watch and hang out, ask questions or whatever you might have. But we're going to go ahead and dive in. I'm really excited to get going on this. So I'm going to dive in pretty quickly here and get some of this going so you guys can see some of the paint that's getting on here. We had some wonderful questions asked yesterday. I thought they were absolutely brilliant. Thank you to everybody who tuned in yesterday and commented and shared some thoughts, asked some great questions. They were absolutely brilliant. As you guys know, I love questions. It allows me to continue to teach while I'm kind of working through here, so it's a lot of fun. Appreciate you guys very much. Had a wonderful session today at the Academy. Got to teach a little bit of some acrylic painting, which was wonderful, and got to watch a masterful watercolorist do some work. She worked so unbelievably fast. I was just absolutely blown away by her talent and her skill, and it was a blast. It was a lot of fun. So thanks for joining us. Hopefully you guys can see everything okay. Let me know if you have any questions or if there's some challenges. I'm still learning the process of going live here via StreamYard and some of these platforms. You can follow us on all different social media. We have Twitch live right now. We've got Instagram live going. We've got YouTube, Facebook. So please feel free to jump in and give us your comments and thoughts on what's going on. But hopefully you like so far what we've been doing. I'm going to paint for a little while tonight. Just keep working on these pant legs. Since we're not running any 8-week courses, it's a great chance for me to get in and really explore this and practice this. So I'm really excited to dive in and get some work done on this painting until we get really crazy busy after the holidays, where we'll be running our 4-week sessions as well as our 8-week courses. And we're really excited about the enrollments that we have, the students that we have. It's going to be an amazing next semester of classes here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. So thank you to everybody who's enrolled and signed up. We're excited for you to be a part of this community. But I'm going to get painting here. And so I like to work a little, I like to bounce around a little bit. I'm focusing really on just some general shapes, and then I'll continue to tighten it up, continue to build on that. But please feel free to ask anything you might want to know. If I can answer it, I'll do my best. But I'm just going to keep going here. This painting really makes me nervous. If you've listened before, it's got a story behind it, which is that it's one of my daughters. It's one of my daughters, and I really want to capture her personality with this. And luckily, some family members have been able to jump on. They've seen the painting online here, and they've given me some feedback that they think it's captured her pretty well. So I'm hoping I can maintain that. I really don't want to. Not only do I not want to disappoint her, I don't want to disappoint myself. This is, a very near and dear painting to me. And if you've listened to any of these, I've kind of harped on it, and I don't necessarily mean to, but I like to kind of, I like to kind of, emphasize that painting people that I think can sometimes be very challenging. Sometimes I think it can be pretty tough because you know them. You have these expectations of who they are and what they should look like and how they are, and I think that can be somewhat challenging. Sometimes it's easier to paint people that you don't know. And I really don't want to mess this one up. I really want to capture this one. I want it to turn out really, really strong because, again, it is something. It's a painting for me. It's a painting for her. And I don't think this painting I would ever sell, which is okay. Not all artwork has to be for some kind of commission or for sale, but I just really want to do really well on this piece. And so I've got some great friends. I've got some wonderful artists. Our co-instructors, Chad and Thomas, are coaching me up and really motivating me and encouraging me. And it makes a big difference when you have a community. It's one of those things. Oh, Patricia, you're painting too. Oh, awesome. Oh my gosh. Awesome. I love it. I'm glad you're painting with me, Patricia. It's almost like you're here in the studio with me again. I hope the paintings are going well. And if they're not, don't worry. It's okay. You remember, we talked about it. I'm going to mess this one up a whole bunch of times, but I know that your paintings are going great. Are you working in watercolor? Oh, she loves it. So far, my daughter loves it. She comes in, she gets a big smile on her face. She absolutely loves it. That's part of the reason I don't want to mess it up. What awesome, Patricia, and your watercolors. I love it. Fantastic. Did you pull any reference from your beautiful decorations and everything that you've got going on? Your house is so beautifully decorated. It's amazing. Did you try doing any of the garland or any of the greenery or anything like that? Which is a challenge, by the way. I think that's a big, tough challenge. Or you're working on some of those landscapes? It's definitely interesting to see, and I got to get, so raw umber is very grainy for me. I've got to get some linseed oil in here. So I apologize, guys. Let me get a little bit of linseed oil in here, really get some of this going. I do think that would be a good challenge for you, Patricia. I think it would be something that would be tough, to work on, but it would allow you to work on those textures. And I think that would be really, really good. Your trees were brilliant. I love the way that you did your trees. You really started working on those. The textures that you achieved, I thought, were fantastic. I think it was really, really strong. And so I'd love to see you continue some of that. But I'm so glad that you're painting with me, Patricia. That's fantastic. That's phenomenal. I hope others are painting with us too. Get out some paints, get out a sketchbook, do some work, paint together, give us some comments, give us some feedback, let us know what you're working on. I absolutely love seeing and knowing that we're, painting. I think I mentioned the other day that, one of the great things about technology is that we get to work together, even if we're not in the same studio. And a lot of our students, are here locally, and they've joined the academy, they've joined the studio, they come in for our live drawing sessions on Thursday nights, or they've taken some of our classes or our courses or intro to art sessions. But a lot of people have reached out and said, hey, they've let me and Chad know, they've let Thomas know that they're not here locally, they're not able to be a part of it. So I would love for you guys to join us, tell us what you've got going on. And I'm going to share this comment from Patricia. It's absolutely amazing. We artists have to stick together. You are 1,000% correct, Patricia. I agree with you. It takes a village, kind of like raising kids, but it's just so much fun when I know we're all painting together. So thank you, guys. Patricia, thank you. I think you're absolutely spot on with it. And I'm curious to see how much I can get done today, because I think I'm going to be able to get a pretty good, healthy section done on this, and I'm excited for it. And then I also, Chad Nuss, one of our master draftsmen and one of our instructors here, he encouraged me, and I'm so glad he did. He encouraged me to go out and get a second canvas. He's like, don't be afraid, dive in, start working on another piece. And I was a little intimidated because I was afraid, okay, if I start focusing on this canvas only, am I going to hyper focus on this? Am I not going to get some work done on the other one? And he's like, look, just do it. Just go and do it. And so I went ahead and got another 30 by 40 canvas. I'm going to work on getting that one drawn up for you guys. You guys can kind of see what's going on there. And if you notice, if you guys can see this closely enough, some of these little tick marks, I get asked all the time, like, why are these here? I consider these notes. These are mental notes from when I did my initial drawing pass on the painting, and they allow me to not have to always look back at my reference. And the reason that I think that's so good is because, again, I'm not trying to paint a photo. I don't want to paint the photo exact. There are amazing artists that do photorealism, and it's absolutely spectacular. I'm absolutely blown away. And yes, this piece is really detailed in a certain sense, and there is an element of realism to it. But if you look at some of the brush marks, brush strokes, and if you look at it, I'm trying to still maintain a level of painterliness to it. I still want it to be a painting. And so when I make these marks in here and I make this drawing beforehand, I've kind of started to paint it once already. I've already done the painting once in my mind. My mind's processing it as I'm working it, and I'm reminding myself, hey, here's a dark fold right here. Don't forget that. Even if I look at the reference, yeah, okay, it may be there, but this allows me to kind of keep working the painting instead of constantly having to glance back at my reference or use my reference. And it allows me to assess and go, okay, yeah, how is this working? Am I getting the texture? Am I getting what I want? So that's always really, really nice. So again, don't be afraid to ask these questions. I like being able to answer, why do you have that there? Why do you have this there? Well, that's the answer. That's why I'm doing it. And again, I don't think there's any one right way. I think everybody has a different way of working, and I think that's brilliant. And I think it's great if you achieve what you want to achieve and you feel good about it. That's what you should be doing. So I've got this. I'm going to have to get this on a steady cam, I think, because this camera, as I move, I talk a lot and I move a lot, and as I do, it's bouncing around. And so I'm sorry for the camera moving on that second camera. I changed the way that second camera is holding up or being held up, because honestly, it was kind of in my way when I was painting the other day, and I kind of got frustrated with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to do something with it. So I'm trying a whole different approach with this 2-camera angle here. You guys will have to let me know if it's bouncing too much. Please let me know. I'll get it fixed eventually, maybe for the next live session. But I'm trying to work through it here. Really pushing some of these folds here. Nice, and just kind of let those kind of organically kind of happen and push. Thanks for joining me today, guys, on a wonderful Tuesday. I got to teach a couple wonderful classes earlier today. And now I'm getting to work on this painting. So I think it's a pretty great day today. Any day we get to paint is pretty awesome. I've got a number of oil painting sessions coming up this week. We've got some of our 2-hour explorations, and boy, I can't tell you, I'm so excited for that. It's one of the greatest rewards when people come in for our 2-hour oil painting sessions, and they're like, they've never worked in oils, or they've only worked once or twice in it. They don't know how they're going to do in it. They're kind of intimidated by it, and then they leave, and I think they have a phenomenal experience. They're learning techniques that maybe they didn't think they could do, or just had a really fun time with friends and just came in and did something that's really unique. And I think a lot of them leave with a painting that they actually want to put up on their wall. And I think that's a really powerful thing, is you get to share a piece of yourself in your decoration or in your house, and people get to see it. That's one of the greatest things. Oh, you love that it's closer up. Awesome. Thank you. Oh, Susanna, you asked a great question. Let me get that here for you guys, and I'll show you guys. So this was a great question. So I'll move the camera so you guys can kind of see a bit. And you guys can see that this is the feet here and the pant legs. Hopefully that texture turned out pretty well. I think it's turning out pretty good. Again, I want that texture. I know you're getting a weird angle here because I'm angling the camera down. I'm not actually moving it down. But I've got this set here. And then as you see, I'm kind of progressing up. I'm bouncing around. So this is the back side of the pant leg from the whole piece. And if I leave it there, maybe you guys can see a little bit more of that. If I pan up, you guys will see that this is Again, a poor angle of that facial portrait there because we're looking up at it now. But as I move it down, you'll see kind of that's where we're at. So Layla, we're on the underside. This is her left arm that's tucked into her pants pocket. I'm on the back side of that pant. And the reason I'm working like that is because I want to stay somewhat consistent within my values from the face down to the feet. And now this is the middle of the painting. So I'm working on all of the different pieces of the painting. And eventually what you're going to see is I'm going to start working on some of the other textures. For instance, back here, this is actually a carpet area back here, which is going to be very highly modeled. It's going to have a lot of texture. And then I'll move into the wood flooring with paneling here. I've got a couch here and I've got some wood walls. So there's going to be a lot of different places that I work around. Oh, thank you, Patricia, for really like that it's closer up. Oh, thanks, guys. Layla, thank you. I appreciate you. Hopefully you don't think your teacher's nuts. Well, okay, you probably think I'm nuts, but that's okay. Hopefully you think I'm talented enough to instruct you because your work is phenomenal. I'm blown away by you guys. That entire class that you guys were in were exceptional. In fact, I had a session today. You guys are going to like this, Layla. This is for you. People came by and saw your portraits, and they were like, wow. And then I told them what age and grade you guys were in, and they were unbelievably blown away. They were like, in fact, the gentleman, and I quote, goes, that's unfair. So it's incredibly powerful work. You guys did an amazing job on those. Excellent work. Your portraits turned out amazing. Really proud of those. And you guys worked really hard that whole 8 weeks. I can't wait to see what you guys do in that next session. Very good stuff. So this is, I'm going to try to create this ridge here. Really kind of push this value on top. See if I can get that lifted out. Really create that kind of little bit of a bubbling effect, I guess, if you will. Really lift that pant leg. And I'll keep layering on that. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Tuesday. We are getting closer and closer to the holidays. My kiddos are super excited. I hope you all are too. Get to spread some joy, some happiness. If you were listening the other day, I did not get to watch It's a Wonderful Life. And let me tell you, that just bums me out. I'm going to have to make sure that we get to do that because that is a tradition my wife and I have, and I got to make that happen. We are running and gunning. We're all over the place. She's starting to deal with the early stages of pregnancy, and boy, that is, I can't imagine what that is. That's unbelievable. What an amazing gift. Well, I hope everyone's doing all right. Let me know if you guys are having any questions. Got a question. Seth, are you doing the elf at home? Yes. Yes, we are. We are doing the elf at home. We have 2 elves. We have Bill and Baby. And then our 2-year-old, it's funny, you know, even though she speaks very, very well, but after last Christmas, her and her sisters wrote a letter to Santa asking if they could have another elf. Well, Santa didn't provide another elf because I guess we already had 2, which I think every household really only needs 1 elf. But they sent a reindeer. So we have 2 elves. We have 2 elves and we have a reindeer. And they get into so much mischievous nature. I mean, it's insane. They TP'd our tree already once. They TP'd our ceiling fan. It's our elves tend to get into a lot of trouble. Do you guys do the elf as well? Do you guys have an elf? Great question here from Patricia. Let's see what she's saying. Are you constantly checking the picture? Or are you going rogue with the pants? Great question. Honestly, it's a little bit of both, Patricia. So I have my reference photo pulled up over here. My photo, sorry, I'm slurring my words a little bit. My accent's coming through, I guess. But I am referencing the photo, but then what I've done is between my notes, my reference photo, and then my own imagination, I'm combining those 3 things, and I'm kind of making it one, if that makes sense. So I'm combining those 3 things, making it really kind of one. That way it's still pulling from that photo, but it has its own energy, if that makes sense. I think that's a phenomenal question, Patricia. Some people will stick to that photo, you know, like to a T, if that makes sense. And some people are just going to have their drawing and then they're going to paint whatever they want. But I really, really want to find a balance between these textures. So the trick for me is making sure that these pants, and I'll pan down again because I think you can see it a little bit more. I really want these pants to have a different texture than the flesh and all the other stuff, because these pants are very, very unique. They're very much that 1980s denim. And I think that denim is really interesting. It's got a great look and feel to it. So I'm doing both. I'm referencing the photo, but I'm also having a little bit of freedom with it. So it's not necessarily rogue. I like how you said, are you kind of going rogue with it? I'm not necessarily going rogue with it, but I am allowing myself the freedom to change things and interpret what I want from my reference, my line reference, my drawing reference, and then also from the photo itself. I know that's a little bit of a long-winded answer, Patricia, but I hope that helps. Oh, that's amazing, Susanna. That's hilarious. Yeah, it is a little. The daughter that I'm painting now is asked, how come the L's eyes never move? So that's been a challenge. That has been that's been an interesting one. I think she's kind of getting a little creeped out too, that things are happening in the evening time when she's sleeping. She doesn't necessarily like it too much. I will tell you, it is a chore. It is a chore cleaning up after those guys all the time. I do love the holidays though. Oh, great. Yeah, that is a good point. So I think, so Patricia made the comment just now, it makes it more interesting to paint, she thinks, or she would think. And I don't know if it makes it more interesting to paint, because some people may not. Some people may enjoy just going directly off the grid reference. For me, it does. For me, it makes it more mine, right? Now, the photo is mine. I took the photo. It's a moment in time that I captured that I absolutely love, hence why I wanted to paint it. But as you're kind of saying, it makes it more of a unique painting as a whole for me, I guess. It allows me to make it a painting rather than just a duplication of the photo. And not that that's bad. I'm not saying that that's a bad scenario or anything negative or anything like that. But I really, really enjoy the energy that comes from the painting. So I like changing it up. And I guess to your point, yeah, it does. It makes it a little bit more interesting for me personally, maybe not for others, to be able to paint it in this fashion. And I think it's fun because, again, I think I've shared with you specifically, Patricia, and I think I've shared here before, one of the great statements that was given to me from one of my mentors and one of the professors that I had was, you have to be better than your reference. You have to be better than your reference. And I think that's an incredibly true statement, in the sense that, if something looks off and you don't like it, you are the artist. You get to fix it. Even if it's my photo, even if I want it to have a level of realness to it, that doesn't mean that I can't change it. In fact, I just saw a post the other day. Boy, do I wish Chad was on here. I wish our other instructor, Chad, was on here. I saw a photo the other day that showed the great Norman Rockwell, and it showed some of his reference work for one of his famous paintings. And what was amazing is you could see that, yes, he had the reference photo. He had that element there, but he modified and changed it and pushed the poses, pushed the energy, pushed the emotion further than he could get even in that photo. And if he wanted to have that photo as a real entity, he would have just taken that photo and submitted it to the New York Post. But instead, he took it even further. He took that reference, and you could see the line works of where he changed the angle of the body. He changed the angle of the gesture or the pose, and he really pushed those elements. And I think that's the beauty of it, right? Photography is absolutely amazing. But if we just are doing that, I think, there's a skill. And it blows my mind when I see people that do hyper photorealism. I'm just always amazed by it. But for me, which means there's no right or wrong answer here, right? But for me, I really enjoy the fact that I can manipulate it. So yes, that's an incredibly long rant, I guess, Patricia. It does make it more interesting for me. You're right. I think it does. It allows me to have a little bit more fun with it and makes it more interesting. See if I can get some of these highlights up here. Really get that scene to start kind of bouncing around. Again, this is the grisaille, or the gray painting, the underpainting. And the whole point is that this will layer. I'll add layers to this. I'll add color on top or chroma on top, and we'll continue to see that evolve. This is going to be the most detailed. I've talked a lot about the fact that I'm using a smaller brush at this point, but I will ultimately move to larger brushes for the background elements and some of the other areas. And but I really want to get this heavy texture, so I'm working really hard on this heavy texture here. See, now, right now, I'm going to look at my photo, and this was a good thing, Patricia, if you're still on. I'm going to look at my photo, and I'm capturing a section of information. I'm not looking at just one thing. I'm interpreting a section of that pant, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to continuously work on that section for a while. So I'm glancing at my reference that I have pulled up, but then I'm coming back and I'm going to work on certain elements, and I'm just going to kind of go through it, if that makes sense. I'm not going to constantly look back. I'm going to keep working through it at a certain pace. I kind of want to move up to this section. This is going to be a really tough section for me. This is a stitching on the pockets. And the stitching on these pockets, you can kind of see I've got some notes here. I've got some notes kind of through here that are showing me the stitching, but it's really quite a challenge in the sense that I want to capture that essence of it. And so I'm going to work through it. And the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to drop in my darks. So you're going to see me drop in. So here's a good example of how I typically kind of work with things like this, where I'm going to drop in these dark elements. See my notes? My notes indicate to me where those darker elements are. And so I know that I want those there. I'm going to drop in those darks, work through that, and you're going to watch. I'm going to push 3 major values here in a second. And you're going to see I'm starting with this dark one first, really getting that. And then I'm curious. You guys will have to let me know if this is a success or not. You have to let me know if this works. And if it doesn't, please tell me, because the beauty of it is I can rework it. I'm going to angle up here just so you guys can see a little bit more. So this is where I'm working right here. And I want you guys to tell me, let me know if this little seam, this little stitching of the pocket pops. So if I can achieve that, I will be pretty daggone happy. And you're going to see that I'm putting in a medium gray here, kind of a neutral. This is my tone. So the great thing about the grisaille or the grisaille, I apologize. I think it's grisaille. I don't really, my French is not very good, or I don't have any French, so there's that. But in fact, maybe this Christmas, my aunt will be there. She's fluent in French. She's a French teacher, French and English teacher. And I will ask her, and at Christmas, she will let me know. And I will find out. So that way I can say it properly in the coming sessions. So now watch. So I've got my darker tone, I've got my mid-tone, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to add in a light tone here and place some of these guys. Well, I guess you guys can tell when I'm really focused because I don't talk. I'm going to put this right in here. It's a little bit darker. Great question. What size brush is that? This is a 0 round, which I'll share a little something with you. It's a size 0 round, but I cut some of the bristles. I wanted a different little bit of an edge, so I went in and I love this brush, but I like, so there's a brush that's a chisel, and if you've worked with a chisel, I really like a good chisel, especially for an underpainting. It helps me kind of push that paint around. I like pushing it. I can get a good line with it, so I like a good chisel. The difference is I also like the element of around. So I went in and I cut some of these bristles on here, but this technically is a size 0 round, and that's what I'm currently working with. And so now I'm going to come in and add some movement and some lines here. Really get these. Hopefully that gives us a little bit of that edging there. And what's really neat is this little bitty section, that triangle section there, that is flesh. So that is a little hint of the feet and the face that I've worked on, that's a little hint of that flesh that's going to be coming through there. So I'm going to smooth that out, but I don't want to do that just yet. What I want to do now is I want to work some of these little highlights and some of these lowlights. I'm going to make some notes here for myself of where some of these happen, because they're going to be replicated through that seam. And so I'm making some notes. I've already done a couple of notes there for my darker areas, but I'm making some notes here. And again, I'm gathering some information from my reference photo, but I don't feel chained to it. I think that's a good way to put it, Patricia, is I don't feel like I'm chained to that reference photo. I have the freedom to make adjustments. And so I'm coming in now and I'm going to change up some of this pant leg and add some elements to it and hopefully get a good result with it. Plus, over time, I think it's important to practice. You and I talked a lot about, practicing with trees, practicing with texture, pulling trees, doing all that kind of stuff. And the more you practice a texture, the more you can replicate it without having to see it, if that makes sense. So as I work with this jean material, and gosh, I wish I could think of what it's called. It's not full jean. It's like a whitewash kind of 80s jean. But the goal is to know it well enough to where I can then come back in and I can create it on my own without having to use it as a full-blown reference. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thanks for joining, Chad. Yeah, I pointed out to you a few times. I was hoping you'd join so you could give some feedback and answer some questions from some people. Boy, what I'd love is we're going to get Chad on here soon, guys. We were going to try the other day, and I had some technical difficulties, but we're going to get Chad on here soon, showing some of his work, some of his progress, his skill sets. And then also, too, I'd love to have him jump on here as well as Thomas and some other artists and have some discussions and techniques. But I think it's phenomenal when you have, we were, Patricia made a comment about sticking together. It's amazing when you have artists that help guide you and motivate you through it. And so I'm super excited to have the level of instructors that we have here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. We're incredibly honored, blessed, fortunate to be able to have the instructors and the level of instruction that we have. And also the students too. Our students are absolutely phenomenal. One of our students is on watching or was on watching, and I can't tell you how talented she is, and we're blown away. Well, we have multiple students on that I'm always blown away by, but at a young age, her talent and skill sets are spectacular. It's incredibly motivating as an instructor when you have your students do the work, when they put in the work, when they work hard, and you can see their progress through it. It's one of the most rewarding things. And I just feel so blessed and so fortunate. I was a teacher for a number of years. One of my favorite things I've ever done in my life was coaching sports. I love coaching, and essentially that's what the Academy is we're coaching young artists, adult artists, senior artists. We're coaching people through their techniques and their skills, and how lucky am I that that's what we get to do here. And it's a wonderful thing. And I know that Chad feels the same way. I know Thomas feels the same way. We are incredibly fortunate to do what we do. So thank you. Thanks for making it a reality. Oh, Patricia, you're too kind. You're so kind. And how fortunate are you that you get to paint the way that you paint? And I felt so grateful that we got so many sessions in that short period of time. And we went through a lot. Boy, did we go through a lot. We went through perspective. We went through some values and all these other techniques. And I know it's a challenge, but I think it's really helped your watercolor work tremendously, especially the compositional elements. I think that was a huge win for us as a team, and it was great. And thank you for such a kind comment, Patricia. You're so wonderful. So again, I'm staying somewhat loose with these pants because I don't want to get too restricted with it. I can come back in, and once I finish the grisaille, or the grisée, again, I'm going to butcher that now until Christmas, and I can ask my aunt, who's fluent in French, how to say it. In fact, you know what? I should just call her at night and just be like, hey, tell me how this is. But how am I saying this? That way, if I go live tomorrow, I won't be butchering it. But the goal is to not be too, yes, this is tight. I know this is tight, but to not be overly tight, so that way, when I come back in, I still have the freedom of the next layer. And so I'll find some balance there. but you guys can see that hopefully this is starting to come together in a short amount of time. Starting to kind of come together. I'll pan out here in a second. I'll take the camera off and show you guys the full length so you guys can see the progression. But for a lot of our students that aren't able to be with us, I hope you guys are enjoying these live sessions, or for our students that are even locally, I hope you guys are getting something out of this and painting with us. Patricia, I know you're painting too. I love it. I love that you're painting. I love that you're getting some work done. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So again, I'll keep working. You know, it was funny. One of the comments made the other day, you know, was about one of the sections of the feet, and they were right. The anatomy on it was just slightly off. The bone placement was slightly off. But what I loved is, again, I can go back and fix it. I can go back and keep working. I can go through it. And so I think that's a beautiful nature. Now I am going to change. I've got this larger area here. And if you remember, one of the things that I talked about is don't use a small brush for such a large area unless I need to. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a different brush I've got. And I think this is a number 2 round. So it's not too much. It's not much bigger. Don't be like, oh yeah, you really bumped up there. But it's going to be a little bit of enough of a bigger space that I can kind of throw in some bigger groupings of color. And this is going to allow me to work through it in a very different fashion. Now, one of the things that I didn't show and that you guys could see is that I've pre-mixed up some, I don't know if you can see it. I've got my values. So I didn't create full 7 values, but I've got my values and I'm pulling from them so that I have some consistency, but then also too, that I don't have to constantly mix every single value. And so I'm working through those. And then I do create values as I go because I notice what's what, but I want to continue to have that freedom of the grayscale and pun intended here, in my back pocket, so that I can pull those and feel pretty comfortable with where I'm going there. Now this pant still has a mottled look. So I'm going to do some wet on wet mixing, right? Some brush mixing on the canvas just to get it a little bit more of that mottled look. That way it's not so flat. Which I know some people will argue, well, you know, you should just go in and place each individual of those values. But I've always stumbled. Alvarez hated it about some of my artwork, but I really focus and try to achieve that texture. Oh boy, wow. What wisdom here. Take a look at this comment, guys. If you guys are watching, take a look at this. Oh boy, you should read that, man. That's a great quote. That is a great quote. And is it ever so true? It is incredibly true. Take a look at that. Instructor Chad Nuss dropping some wisdom for us, guys. Awesome. And it's no different, you know, it's no different than coaching, right? You know, in the sports world, we call it being coachable. We say that, a player, an athlete is coachable. It's the same thing. It's the same concept, right? And I've said it many times, and many of our students have heard me say this. I love the saying that, is some often attributed to Michelangelo, which is ancora imparo. And again, I have a Kentucky accent, guys. I apologize. I'm butchering the Italian, but if somebody could actually say it beautifully for me, I would love it. But it's basically the concept of still I am learning, right? And I think that's incredibly powerful because even as an instructor, I'm constantly learning. I learn stuff from my students. I learn stuff from other artists. The art world is a small world. It's a global world now, and you can pull information from so many people. And I think that's something that I think we strive for here at the Academy. The first day that I met Patricia and she was painting with me, her and I shared about 5 or 6 different artists. Maybe it wasn't that many, but 2 or 3 different artists that she engaged with online, that I engaged with online. And you can see that, this is truly a community. I'm not saying you have to paint this way or this is the only way to do it. I think there are so many brilliant, wonderful people out there that we can learn from, and we should. If we have this, imagine being able to reference and see these other artists on a regular basis. It's absolutely amazing that you can watch their work progress and grow, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. And to your point, Chad, the willingness to learn, the willingness to practice, the willingness to grow is huge. And I don't know. I wonder if, let's see. I don't know. I got to figure out how. I don't know if Susanna and Layla are still on. If Susanna and Layla, if you guys are on, let me know, because I'm going to reference something that I said to her the other day, and I'm curious to see what you guys think about it. But or if she even remembers that I told it to her. But we'll see if they're still on. I don't want to. I think it's something that's interesting and unique. Well, I shouldn't say unique. A lot of coaches feel that way. And if they're not on, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys anyway. I don't want to keep you in suspense. But notice how I was able to work that space much more quickly, much faster, with a larger brush. And so I was able to fill that space up and kind of get that going there. So this stitch work is going to be, I'm going to switch back to the smaller brush. Well, actually, I think maybe I'll work in some of these spaces. I think I'll work some of these spaces in. But what I was saying to a student the other day, Layla, in the class the other day, we were talking about swimming and practice and sports and athletics. And I had mentioned to her, I said, every teammate that goes to practice, they're doing pretty much, well, they should be doing the practice. They should be doing what the coach is teaching them, coaching them to do. And so if you think about it, if you have a team of 55 athletes, that's the expectation, right? That's the expectation, is to show up and do the regiment through practice. What are those that are wanting to be exceptional? They have to practice exceptionally harder or better or more. Talent only gets you so far. And I think it's the same thing with art. I love seeing when artists talk about, everybody always says, oh, it's talent, it's talent, it's talent, it's talent. Yes, I'm not denying there is such a thing as talent. Yes, you have a natural God-given ability, but the hard work makes everything better. Doing the work is what really makes you better and stronger as an artist. And I think people, just think, oh yeah, well, you could just do this. You could just do that. You just have that ability. I think that's a shame. I think that's a discredit to that person's work ethic. And maybe some don't have to work hard. Maybe some artists on here are looking at me and going, yeah, it's super easy for me. I can only speak to my personal experience, and that is incredibly challenging to work as hard as you can to be the best that you can. And I think it's, talent only gets you so far. And as an athlete, the expectation is to show up and to practice. Well, as an artist, the expectation is to do this. Well, how am I going to be better? How am I going to do more? And that's where Chad motivated me to work on a second one, to work on another one, and I think that's huge. It motivated me to want to do more. Hence why I'm doing this painting. I didn't want to be complacent as an instructor. I didn't want to be complacent as an artist. This is a challenge for me. This painting is a challenge. I think it's probably the most detailed, most intense painting I've ever done. And it's of my daughter, which is intimidating and scary to me, because I don't want to mess it up and I want it to capture her essence. And so push ourselves, right? As artists, we got to push ourselves. Oh yeah, Chad, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And what's really interesting, Chad, and I really hope we get a chance. I haven't reached out to him yet because this is like day 4 of going live. But I would love for you to hear some of the other artists that he inspired and motivated. I would love for you to hear some of their wisdom that they received from him. And I think we have a really great chance of getting a couple to join us. I think you'll find that, even some of the wisdom he shared with me is nothing compared to the influence that he had on all of his students. He was a phenomenal instructor, a phenomenal motivator, a unique person. I mean, he was a phenomenal artist, but just a unique person all around. And I think you're right. I am incredibly fortunate to have, his influence and his legacy and motivation and everything else that kind of comes with it. And I really think that we have a good chance of getting some other amazing artists. The artist Mitchell Kaufman out of New York, hopefully will join us. Hopefully Charles Pate out of South Carolina will join us. I'm really hoping these amazing artists give a chance to, maybe even someday give some guest lectures here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio, which would be amazing. I'd love to have some guest exhibitions with them. I think that, again, it's all about the community. It's all about what we're able to achieve together. And if you don't follow them on social media, please go follow those guys. They have been huge influences on me ever since we were at university, at college together, ever since we were teammates together. and their work is absolutely exceptional. Thank you, Patricia. I think it's really starting to come together. I think at this time, I'm gonna pull the camera out, so bear with me, and I'll step back and give you guys a further view, hopefully if that's all right with you guys, so you can see how this is starting to come together. So bear with me one second here. I'm gonna try to shift out of this without knocking anything over, and I'll give you guys a chance to take a look and see what we've got going on. So bear with me here, and I'll get this camera out of the holder, lift this up. And so what we've got is you guys can kind of see some of it starting to come together. So bouncing around the canvas, moving around the canvas, working different areas so it becomes consistent. Here is a better angle of the feet and the bottom of the pants. Again, really trying to find that softness of the gray tones, all the tones, the tints and the shades, but finding the softness of the flesh within the texture of the pant leg, really working that in. And then as you can see, as I come up, really trying to find that balance of that pant leg as well there. And then even further up, you guys can see there. Now, one of the things that I'm constantly looking at are the values of the face. And Chad and I were discussing the other day that close up, the value looks really strong. It looks very good. But some of these darker tones, and let me see if I can grab a brush here so I can point it out. Some of these darker tones here are a little dark. I'm not a big fan of around the lips. I've got to soften some of this up. I've got to soften these here. Yes, I like the chiaroscuro that's happening, but I've lost some of that value there. And so I've got to do something really to hyper change that, push those values. If you guys look, it's becoming lost. It's no longer, my values are too similar, if that makes sense. So I've got to come back in and really work this. Now I am getting some of the I don't want to say muddiness, but the values are converging because there is a little bit of a cast shadow from her hair, but I have to go back in and work some of these values. And so I'm going to continue to work on that. But as so far, it's really coming together. It's really doing this. And what's really interesting, Chad, I think, well, thank you for that compliment. I really appreciate that, sir. But I was reading something today that I think you're going to like. So I'm going to reposition this camera. I'm going to sit back down and really keep working on this. But Chad, bear with me one second. I want to share something with you that I read today that I think you're really going to like. And I think it was really interesting. So let me get this position back so that everybody can see this okay. And thank you for such a wonderful compliment, Chad, especially coming from you, considering that your drawings look like Renaissance paintings. And if you have not seen Chad's work, again, I think I mentioned this the other day, you got to come into the Academy. Chad's got an amazing studio space on our second floor. We have a second floor gallery, which is phenomenal. I'm really, really excited about it. And he gets to work up there. And what's beautiful is getting to see the progress on his pieces, his charcoal drawings and his graphite drawings. But what I heard, Chad, the other day, which I thought was spectacular, is that the grisaille or the grayscale is a way that they used to paint classic sculptures. So the goal of the grisaille was to create a sculpture-like feel. And it's really amazing because when you think about it in this form of just creating and painting in value, when you're just focused on your value scale and form, it ends up looking very sculptural, right? And I was literally telling some of the students the other day that it's almost as if you're sculpting with the medium, right? You're sculpting form with graphite, you're sculpting form with paint, and you're chiseling away, and you're constantly kind of, obviously this is an additive medium, right? It's not subtractive like sculpture. But the point of a grisaille in a lot of ways, and even some of the Flemish painting styles and the other painting styles, was to be so sculptural with it. And I think that's amazing. And that's one of the things I think, into your very kind and wonderful words about it looking like, and I'll share it so everybody can see, because I don't know if you guys can see the comments if I don't post them. But the goal of that whole process was to make it look sculptural. And the Renaissance paintings really wanted to make it look full life, right? Chad, they wanted it to be full of life and to be truly anatomically correct and have full form. So I think that's really, really one of the highest levels of compliments you can give me, good sir. So thank you for that. I don't know if it's deserving of it or not, but I really appreciate that kind gesture and those kind words. So again, I'm going to, at this point, I think, Patricia was asking a good question not too long ago. She was asking, are you glancing at the photo? Since I was talking so much, I'm going to re-look at my image, pull in information. It's not really taking a photo of it in my mind, but it's pulling in information and making notes. And so then I'm going to come back. Like I didn't draw these in because I wanted the freedom of them, but I will come in and make some notes of different elements of what I like, and then I can modify it and change it. But I really like this kind of thing that's happening here with this pant. And so I'm going to work it there. Now you'll notice that I'm starting to get some of this work done. I've got a lot of elements to do on this stitching, which, some of these are a little bit too bright, but what I'm doing is I'll come back in and keep working those and soften some of those up, add some elements to that, but that stitching. But what you want to be careful with is I don't want to overwork this as a line, if that makes sense. So what I need to do is I need to get value on this other side. I need to get value on this other side, kind of like what I did over here. So that way I can compare. That way I can keep a cross-reference, if you will, of what this value is doing and what that value is doing. So I have an idea of how it's working. And so I want to make sure I get some value dropped in, so that I can make sure that I see that this is starting to pop. And the other thing that's interesting, and I think I'm starting to get it and starting to achieve it, we'll keep working it, is there should be a little bit of a value shift here with her hand. So her hand's coming in. So there's a hidden form underneath, right? There's a form underneath this pocket that I don't want to lose. And you can't see it because the denim's thick enough that you can't see her hand. It's not like a sweatpant. It's not like a linen. It's not a softer material. But I want to be able to get this sense that you can see that the hand is in here. And what's really, I think, really strong, if you can see it on the camera, is that you can see that her hand, the metacarpals and the palm and everything, they're starting to take shape in there. And so then it bows out a little bit here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and add some white to that because it bows out a little bit here and pops a little bit because her fingers are protruding out. And so I don't want to lose that idea, that illusion that the hand is still there, the hand is still within that. But I'm going to come back and drop in some of my values up here because I want to get that comparison between those. I don't want to see that line just disappear. I want to keep those value elements alive. And that allows me to work in relationship. So I get to work in relationship with these other elements and these other values. And that's incredibly important because you don't want your piece, you don't want one piece to be overworked, one section of the piece to be overworked, and another section to suffer because you become hyper-focused on it. Hence why I started on the face, and that's why I shifted over to the feet. So I'm working top to bottom, I'm working all around, doing all this stuff. Oh, thank you, Laughing Girl. I appreciate you. Thanks for jumping in and joining. Really appreciate it. Working on this. If you haven't seen the whole thing, I'll give you a little bit of a look here. So what we've got is, obviously these are angled, so you can't see the full angle of the piece because they are in a bad perspective there. But just working this underpainting this grisaille. And thank you for your compliment. Thank you so very much. So actually the drawing is complete. This here is oil. So I've done the yellow ochre wash. If you guys are just joining, I've done a yellow ochre wash, so I'm working on a tinted canvas, and this is oil paints. So I'm working through right now the underpainting in raw umber and titanium white. And I'm going to do the entire piece in an underpainting. At the encouragement of our other instructor here, Chad Nuss, I'm working through this in a full process, which it's been some time since I've done an oil this way. Typically, I kind of work more alla prima, just going right in, right on top. But I'm going to do the full grisaille and really get all of these values in place and then put my chroma on and really doing it. So, well, thank you so much. That is so very kind of you. I'm so glad you joined the live stream. This is only our 4th live stream working through this. So I really appreciate you jumping in. Thank you so much. And glad that the piece is starting to turn out. There's a lot still to do, a lot to work through it, but I really appreciate the comments. Thank you. One of the things that was asked is, brush size. Again, this is a 0 round, which I've customed a little bit. So it's a hybrid between a round and a wedge, if you will. It's kind of got a little bit of the hints of both of those things, a wedge and a round. And I like it because I can kind of push paint a little bit like it's a wedge brush, but then I also have the ability to kind of tighten up with a line kind of that around kind of gives. So I'm working through both of those there and really just building out this texture. And sometimes I'm going to soften, sometimes I won't. Sometimes I'll just let it sit, but really working through that. And so going from there to there. This, I'm not going to lie, this stitching here just intimidates me so much. It's one of those things where less oftentimes is more, I think. And I don't want to overwork it. I want to leave it somewhat painterly, but I also want to make sure it pops. I want to make sure it stands out, because that stitching along these jeans, and I'm going to have to look up what these jeans are called. I still can't think of it, but I want to make sure that these jeans really pop for what they are. And now in this case, I am going to use a maul stick, so I'll apologize if this gets in the way of the camera or anything, but I'm going to use a maul stick. Again, a maul stick, my first ever maul stick was just paper towels wrapped in blue painter's tape attached to a dowel rod. So you can make a maul stick just out of anything. I've seen people use rulers, twigs, all that kind of good stuff. But this is going to allow me to not get my hand wet, because I am left-handed working on that side. And this will allow me to hold my hand steady as well. So a maul stick is a great investment, whether it's a cheap one that you can get. You can order them. I mean, art supply stores have them. You can order them online. But it's a great tool, and it helps tremendously as you're working through some specific areas. So right now what I'm doing is I'm dropping in those dark lines, adding some notes in for this seam. I'm going to come in with my darker values first and then drop in some of those elements later, some of those details. Oh, left-handed people on the rise, guys. It's us against the world. No, I'm kidding. But left-handed people unite. It's wonderful. Left-handed people for sure. Doing well. How's it going? Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you taking a look at the live stream here. Thanks for coming in on this painting day. And Chad, I love it. Your current maul stick is a curtain rod. Whatever works, whatever you've got, whatever works, it's phenomenal. It's really good that you guys are doing that. Again, continue to join us if you like what you see. We're going to keep painting. We're going to add other instructors to the live sessions. We're going to do everything from charcoal drawings, graphite drawings, oil paintings, acrylics, oils, watercolor, all that stuff. Really trying to build that community. We have our wonderful Visual Arts Academy and Studio here out of Louisville, Kentucky. But we had Chad and I and Thomas, our main instructors here. We got a lot of requests from people saying, hey, we're not able to take lessons. We're not able to take classes. We're artists. We want to be involved. We want to work together. And so I really am grateful that this has taken place and that everybody can join in. Hopefully, grab a paintbrush, grab a pencil, sit down and paint with us and have a blast on a Tuesday night. Really appreciate you guys jumping in. Thanks for building up that community. The community for the Visual Arts Academy and Studio is one of the most important things we want to build. As Patricia said earlier in the session, us artists got to stick together, and lefties too. Right, Laughing Girl? Lefties got to stick together too. Learning how to use a can opener is one of the biggest challenges in life I think I've ever had. Well, that and maybe the fact that I'm one of the only left-handed people. I have an aunt and uncle that are left-handed and a cousin, but outside of that, the whole family is right-handed. And so I had to work to learn how to do things. But actually, it helped me tremendously. I learned how to play sports right-handed for the most part, and it's kind of allowed me to be somewhat ambidextrous. But left-handed people unite. I'm going to work through some of this here. So I noticed that I really want to push this underside a little bit more. So I'm going to be working wet on wet here. I'm just adding in a little bit more shape to this. I wasn't really happy with that. So I'm working the shape. And this is something, Patricia, as you asked earlier, this was a great question. Again, this is me looking at it and going, oh, I don't like it. This is not from the photo. So I'm not straying too far from the photo because I still want to keep that likeness of my daughter. But I really like the idea of being able to have freedom to modify and change it the way that I want to have the energy. As Alvarez used to always say, you've got to be better than your reference. You've got to be better than your reference. And Chad, I don't know if you got this part or not, but I saw a reference photo from Norman Rockwell where he had completely modified the poses. He pushed them. He pushed the energy. He pushed the angles. He pushed the poses and the facial expressions of his references to get the animated look that he wanted. Oh, yeah, the can opener made you cry. Yes, there's so many different things that people don't even realize. For instance, Laughing Girl, how doorknobs turn. Everybody always thinks they turn to the right, which is great for right-handed people because the radius and the ulna and the forearm, they rotate a doorknob to the right, typically to open. Was us left-handed people, it's a challenge. It's a little bit of a different muscle movement. Can't do anything. That's funny. Can't do anything with either hand. Yeah, those can openers, boy, they were frustrating. Those got me even more than scissors. But yeah, Chad, that Norman Rockwell reference was just mind-boggling to me. It was brilliant to see how that kind of worked through. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start working down a little bit. Again, I'll pan down so you guys can kind of see the feet here. So again, I apologize for the bad angle, but I don't want to have to take the camera out. But you guys can see that that's the pant legs down there at the bottom, really heavily textured, very painterly, really working on that. Heavy chiaroscuro on the feet. So if you're looking here, really heavily chiaroscuro on the feet. Went ahead and added some elements on the grounding again because I wanted some value there for that. And then I'll pan back up so you can see I'm working on that pant leg all the way up to the facial portrait there, working on that. So getting that going there. And then I'm going to come back down and we're going to keep working. This sweater is going to be a challenge, but I have a way of tackling it. I know how I'm going to tackle it. I'm going to drop in the various values and layers first, and then really kind of go and then bring in the striping or the ribbing, the ribbing that is of this. So I didn't go in and draw all of that. You can see I left some here. But for some of the heavier folds, I went ahead and got my contour lines so that I knew those folds and the shapes. So I'm gonna drop in my values and drop in my details later. So again, that layering process. Thank you, Oxmells. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. The details are coming along. It's a process, but I'm gonna keep working for a bit here. Please feel free, ask questions. Let me know if you have anything about the process, the techniques. I've gotten a lot about, what is the process. I've gotten a lot about what are the brushes I'm using, but please feel free and thanks for joining. So again, I'm going to shift over to a larger brush now, not much larger, but I'm going to get some more coverage on this. And so I'm going to get a little bit more coverage on this pant leg here and work some of that in. And so hopefully we can do that and get some extra elements. I'm also going to lower my hand on my brush to loosen me up. The closer I am, if I'm really like this, I'm going to be really, really fine detailed. And what I want to do though is I want to loosen up a bit. And so I'm going to take some of this handle. I like the long brush handles, the longer stem handles, and I'm going to start working in some loose elements. Get some of that in there, and I'm going to let it kind of bounce on the canvas. This is a phenomenal question. Are you busy with a monochromatic or will you add color later? So I could leave this as a monochromatic piece, right? Just with the raw umber and the white. But the goal that I have is to do this truly as a underpainting, as a full-blown grisaille or grayscale underpainting. And so that's a great question, Laughing Girl, is I'm going to do this entire painting in a monochromatic fashion. But then I will layer on, I haven't decided if I'm going to glaze on color on top or if I'm going to go full on alla prima on top of this, right? Or a heavier pigment, if you will, on top. But this is really helping me for a challenging piece like this. This is helping me understand the form as well as the value. Because again, if you take chroma out, if you remove chroma from the painting, all that you're left with is value. And the value allows us to really get that heavy modeling, that chiaroscuro, that form rather than shape. And so this is forcing me to do the painting once, making sure I get the values correct. Alla prima just means in one. That's a great question. I'm going to interject before I finish that thought. Alla prima is all in one pass. It just basically means in one sitting. So if you think of like how Bob Ross painted, Bob Ross was a master of the alla prima style. Now, he did it with a liquid white undercoat. There's other people that do it, but basically it just means a painting in one session. Or alla prima is and I don't know the full direct translation. I apologize, Laughing Girl, but alla prima basically means in first pass or the first going. And so you do the entire painting in one go. With this grisaille or grisaille, however the French is, I think I'll find out in a few days at Christmas. But the whole point is to understand the value first and then layer on the color after that. Hopefully that answers your question. That's a phenomenal question. Thank you for asking. Looking at some of the other questions. Oxmells, how long would something like this take? Well, it depends. This is the most detailed painting I've done in this fashion with this. And so I think so far I've probably put in 6 hours, 6 or 7 hours. But that's also a little misleading because the flesh and the clothing, in my opinion, are the most detailed. And I'm also talking through it. And doing this live, I've never really done anything like this live before. So doing it live is somewhat of a challenge because it's breaking up the methodology. But I think probably all in all, gosh, this underpainting will probably take me, I'd say maybe 15 to 20 hours. And then that next layer, like Laughing Girl's asking, that next layer of color on top, of chroma on top, I would assume that'll probably take me another 15 to 20. So all in all, maybe around 50 hours probably to finish this painting. But it depends. Sometimes, Oxmells, I sit down and boy, I dive in and it just comes really naturally. It comes pretty easy. And then other times I sit down and I feel like I can't put a good brush stroke on the canvas at all. So it really just kind of depends. But if I had to estimate, I'd say probably around 50 hours to finish this piece. And yes, Laughing Girl, you should try this technique. The grisaille is, there's the Flemish style of how they used to do it. There's all kinds of different elements to the grisaille that are powerful and impactful. And it forces you to look at your painting and your values slightly different than maybe you would if you're just going straight in with chroma. And again, there's no one right way, there's no wrong way, but I think this is something, it's a really, if nothing else, it's a great practice, Laughing Girl. And you may want to start with something smaller. Actually, here's a question for you. Are you familiar with what's called an imprimatura? Have you heard of what's called an imprimatura? And you may have heard that as like an underwash. It's also sometimes called an underpainting. But if you haven't done an imprimatura, you might want to start with that first. It's a much looser underpainting, typically with thinned out oil paint, right? You can do it with watercolors. Well, you can't really do it with watercolors, I apologize. You can do it with acrylics, with water. But an imprimatura allows you to do a very quick tonal painting underneath. And I would look that up and take a look at that. That's a great way to kind of do a base grisaille underneath. Well, it's not a grisaille, it's an imprimatura, but it's a great way to get your tones and your values very quickly on a piece before you add your chroma. And I think that's really beneficial to a lot of painters, whether you're a veteran or whether you're new to painting. It's a wonderful technique. And in fact, I could have gone in and done an imprimatura on this with my yellow ochre first. Yeah, underwash, yeah. Fantastic. Excellent. That is just, I love seeing this. I'm going to share this comment out because I love hearing this. This is phenomenal. I love that you work with acrylics, and it's amazing because you can work with acrylics and you can do a lot of the washes and the layering with acrylics. If you're using mediums or even if you're just going to water them down, you can get a lot of that wonderful underpainting done in acrylics as well. And you should absolutely try oils. I think it's intimidating that people are like, I don't know, I'm intimidated by oils. Don't be intimidated. Go for it. It's so much fun, and you'll find that there's things that you can do with oils that are slightly different than acrylics, and vice versa. I would encourage you to have some fun with oils and give it a shot. And if you've been working in acrylics, I think you'll find that there's just subtle differences, but you'll probably like it. I have a lot of students here at the Visual Arts Academy Studio. They're like, I was intimidated by oils. I didn't want to give it a go. And I encourage them to give it a try because it's a lot of fun. It's a different medium, right? And it's just like watercolors. I like diving in and doing watercolors. I like diving in and doing pastels and, graphite and charcoal. And I think it expands your horizons as an artist. And I think it's really beneficial to work in different mediums. And a lot of the techniques translate over, right? And I think that's beautifully beneficial. What did I use to color the background? That's a great question, Oxmells. I did a yellow ochre wash here. And so I really thinned out the yellow ochre, did a heavy wash. I used a nice big 2-inch brush, and really worked on that. So the Imprimatura is the yellow background Laughing Girl, but it's more. A true Imprimatura, so this is just a yellow background wash. This is to tone out my canvas. I didn't, oops, sorry, I just knocked that with my head. You got me all excited asking these great, wonderful questions. I'm so sorry about that. So with this yellow ochre wash, it is technically only a wash because I just tinted my background. I didn't go in and add in value or tones or tints or shades. So I just did a wash so that I didn't have a white background. I didn't want to start. The other reason I use yellow ochre is I think it adds this glowing nature to the painting. Because if I got really, really close, you would see that some of this canvas is not fully painted so far. Some of that yellow ochre is going to pull through. And I think it just adds energy to it. I've always used yellow ochre. I've also used raw sienna and gotten a lot in there with that. The raw sienna tends to be, more red tones, but yellow ochre is really one of my favorites. And so I use that pretty heavily in most of my under washes. But your Imprimatura really should have tonal value. It should be a wash to create form and to create shapes and all that. But I did not do that. I'm doing a full grisaille though, or grisaille. I've got to figure out how to say that. My Kentucky showing through. But let me take a look again. I'll show everybody kind of here. I'm going to pull out the camera, give everybody a nice big view of it. Great comments and questions. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to give you guys a good look here. Bear with me 1 second. And I'll give you guys a better view. Get this out. Thank you guys so much for joining. This is a 30 by 40 canvas. And so you guys can see the full element here. I'll come in a little bit closer so you guys can see some of the details on the feet, the chiaroscuro, the shading. But then what I really am happy with so far is that brushwork on the pant. I really wanted it to be painterly, but achieve that crinkled look of those that jean pant. And so I'm working it in different stages. I'm working in different layers, bouncing around the canvas so that I get some consistency. But you're going to see that bookshelf and that couch in the background is going to be very, very different. Really working through some of those things. Well, yes, it's a heavy French and Italian words, right? A lot of them are French and Italian. They were the great masters during the Renaissance, and they got to coin a lot of the phrases, I suppose. And yes, I don't speak Italian and I don't speak French, but I never thought of this, but I do have an aunt who's a French teacher, and so I could ask her the correct pronunciations. That way I can be a little bit more appropriate with my wording. But you guys can kind of see this here coming together. Any questions or comments? Again, just kind of catching people up. This is an oil painting, 30 by 40. Please feel free to ask questions. I'm going to keep working through it. I've switched over to a slightly larger brush simply because I want to get some more coverage. I want to get some more paint on here. But so far, it's going good. I think you've really made me kind of laugh a little bit, Laughing Girl, which is funny because, again, you're Laughing Girl. But it is interesting how many of the words came out of the Italian and the French languages. But again, it would make sense considering so many of them, were the patrons of the arts, the Italians, right, the Medicis, and then the royalty. And so Italian, Spanish, so much of that really came out of their commissions and again the Renaissance, which it's interesting. But I think it's absolutely brilliant. Great comments, great fun. So again, working through, I hope, please let me know if you guys feel like I'm capturing this texture. This pant is really challenging for me. It's not a standard blue jean. If anybody knows what the heck this kind of pant is called, it's like this, it's not acid washed from the 80s. It's not the grunge scratch. It's like this weird denim. And I don't know how to describe what it is that she's got on, but it's got a weird kind of texture to it. But I want to achieve it. I want to capture it, especially because I think it's a great contrast to the flesh, right? The soft chiaroscuro that Chad was talking about before. I really like the fact that it has the contrast of those jeans into those pants. And so that's a lot of fun. Again, I've got some of my notes here. I want to balance out some of this with some of my tones so that I have a better understanding of what this is looking like and working. So that way it's all in relation to each other. I know where my darkest darks are in the face and the hair, and my darkest darks in the feet, and how does this balance out? How does it rotate? So the reference is right over here on my right. And what I've done is I've taken my photograph that I took of my daughter. And so here you can kind of see it over here. Let's see if I can pan over. So I've got my reference of the photo that I took of my daughter over there. And what I did was, because I didn't want to look at chroma, I didn't want to look at any of the chroma, the color, I've pulled out and just turned it into a grayscale image. And so what that allows me to do is really focus on making sure that it's accurate. And you guys can't see this. I don't know if you saw this just off screen here or not, but a lot of times that iPad goes to sleep. And one of the questions we had earlier was, am I constantly looking at the reference? And the answer is no, I'm not constantly looking at the reference. Between all the notes that I've made on the canvas, my own interpretation, and then what I do glance and see, that's where I pull, I make it my own. And even though the picture itself is my own, I still like the idea of the painting being slightly different. If I wanted to just keep that photograph as it is, I would just print out that photograph and I would do that. But I think there's a certain energy that comes from my own interpretation onto this canvas and with the oil paints. And so that means that sometimes it's not fully accurate. Okay, give me 1 second there, Laughing Girl. I apologize. Let me see if I can unlock this and get that so you can see. And I'll pull the color too. Hang on 1 second. Oh my gosh. It's not letting me in. It's going to wait for my passcode. Bear with me. You can see what that is. And maybe you can help me know what that is. Well, again, it's one of those things where, my mentor really made us understand that you can have all the best reference in the world, but it's still not, it's still just a reference. And, again, you can pose it, you can use multiple reference pieces, you can have multiple, I've seen it where, we used to use multiple hand references. We used to use all these different things to get it just right. But even then, I want it to have a certain energy that I know I can hold to. So this is what that texture is. So it's a jean fabric, but it's like a modeled jean fabric. I don't fully know what that is. And I pulled up the color so that you could see that. But hopefully I'm achieving that level of crinkled texture and modeledness while maintaining a level of painterliness. Because once I go in, and I think that's a great question, Laughing Girl, is once I come in and finish the grisaille, that chroma that comes on top is really going to pop, or at least I believe it's going to pop, because I've done my work, I've created these textures, and then once I add in that blue, it's just going to make this come to life. And I think that's the beauty of doing this grisaille and doing this value study. Essentially, it's a value study of the piece before you go in and add in your chroma. But boy, is it hard. It's challenging. And sometimes it's like, man, I'm going to be redoing this painting twice. And yes, I am. I'm going to be redoing this painting twice. But I think a lot of times that's pushing me beyond my normal limits. Normally, I work very, very fast. And like you, Laughing Girl, I used to work a lot in acrylics. And I think acrylics lend themselves to a faster process, or they can, not always, but they can lend themselves to a faster painting process. And by doing this full-blown value underpainting, and by doing the grisaille, it's forcing me to slow down. And I think that's probably a good thing for me at this stage in my artistic career. Slow down a little bit and work on that process and really understand it. Thank you so much for all the wonderful comments and questions. So glad you guys are here painting with me. Grisaille, really, grisaille. Oh my gosh. Good Lord, Chad. All right, we got to share this one. Everybody, Chad looked it up. Our instructor, Chad Nuss, he took the time. We have supercomputers in our pockets. Thank you, Chad. Grisaille. Wow. Boy, have I been saying it wrong for a very long time. But that's okay. You live and you learn. And now I'm going to say it. And, the funny thing is, Chad, I'm still going to butcher it. I'm still going to butcher this thing. My Kentucky accent's going to pull through, and I'm going to butcher the crap out of it. But I'm going to work on it. Grisaille. Grisaille. Oh, my gosh. That's amazing. According to Google, grisaille. Wow. I bet there is a certain French to it that sounds even better, right? I think it's going to be amazing. And you better believe I'm asking my fluent in French aunt and cousins for them to tell me exactly how that should be said. Or maybe someday we'll get a French individual in here who's native speaking French, native French speaker, and have them educate me a little bit on how to properly pronounce that. Sorry, making some of these stitch marks here, really getting that going. Grisaille, that's still mind-boggling. Grisaille, I'm gonna have to work on that. I'm hoping, Chad, maybe it has that the pronunciation where they actually like say it on Google, so that way I can use that to practice and really hone in and get that saying right. Let's see, he's got another question here. This is a good question. Are you going to let the black and white paint? So technically it's not black. It may look black to you guys. I don't like using black, so you can use blacks. This excuse me. This is actually a good thing to kind of talk through. Blacks typically have a tendency to be warm or cool, and a lot of blacks, I usually use like a Mars black, which tends to be a little bit cooler. It has a blue background mixture in it. There's ivory black. There's all these different blacks that are great, and they're all beautiful and brilliant. And they tend to sway one color palette or the other, right? They tend to be warmer or cooler. And yes, technically you could do this in a true gray. I'm actually using raw umber and titanium white. And over the years, I don't know why, but I always just resonated really, really heavily with raw umber. I've always just really enjoyed the mixture that it gets with it, and it allows me not to use black. I very rarely will use a straight black in anything. I will mix up a very dark indigo blue. I will mix up a very dark red or any of these other colors. I typically try to avoid black unless I'm working in true charcoal or graphite. And even in my colors, I try not to use it. But to your point, yes, I will fully let this raw umber and this white set. And because then I want to come back in and I will layer on top or glaze on top my colors. And hopefully it should give it that real strong form, give it that real strong sense of depth and chiaroscuro. And by that point, I'm just matching value. At that point, I'm just taking my chroma, matching the value of that chroma to the value that's here on the grisaille. Ooh, look, I did it right, guys. Man, if that doesn't get a thumbs up from everybody, come on. That's a big one to actually finally say grisaille correctly. But the goal is to use this as kind of that guide and that walkthrough process of it and really hone in and let it sit, let it dry, layer on top, and let the chroma pop through these values. And if I can do that correctly, I think we'll have a beautifully sculpted, right? There's that word again. Painting is a form of sculpture in a sense, right? I'm sculpting with paint. I'm sculpting with form. And let this really shine through and pop. And so that's the goal. And I hope some of you guys are painting along with me. I know Patricia was painting with me earlier. Guys, get out your paints, your brushes. Laughing Girl, I'd love to see, you kind of push that. I know you were talking about trying and getting in with some oil paints. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Give it a shot. I think you'll be blown away. I think you'll really like the texture. Don't be intimidated by it. Give it a chance. I have all kinds of students all the time that come in here and they just tell me, watercolor. I don't think I can do watercolor. I don't think I can. It's, I've heard it's really challenging. And I go, yeah, it is challenging, but it's worth doing. It's worth getting in there. It's worth giving it a shot. Don't be intimidated by it. Tackle it, and I'm guilty of this too. I've shared already with you guys. This was intimidating to me. This whole process of this painting was really intimidating. I didn't want to mess it up. My daughters are enrolled here at the Academy. I've got a lot of students that, man, I don't want to let them down. I don't want to let our students down. I want them to see that, their instructor is putting practice into work, and working his practice, working his trade, and not just painting the same stuff I paint all the time, not just using the same techniques. I want to continue to grow as well. And I think that's one of the things that makes a good coach, makes a good instructor, is they don't just sit on their laurels. They don't just sit back and say, do as I say. They practice what they preach, so to speak, and lecture and pontificate. And I want to do that for our Academy. I want to be able to show them that I'm putting in the work, that I'm not just asking them to try things and do things that I'm not willing to try and do myself. And I know Chad feels the same way. I know that Thomas feels the same way, and I think it's worth doing. And so I'm trying. I'm giving myself this big challenge, this painting. So far, it's kicking my butt, but boy, I think it's coming along pretty nice. What do you guys think? What do you guys think of the progress so far? This is progress in about an hour and a half. So this is where we've gotten quite a bit of work done so far. I feel pretty confident that we've been doing pretty good. So what do you guys think? Should we keep painting? Should I wrap it up for the day? I know I've gotten a lot of beautiful comments, a lot of wonderful people joining. I think I'm probably going to work for a little bit longer. As long as you guys want to see some of the painting process still going, I'm going to keep working. I'm going to come back up over here, work on this lip over underneath here, get some of this value kind of going. But what do you guys think? Should we keep painting together? I'm so grateful for each and every one of you guys jumping in and painting with me, following along this process. It's so much fun. Oh, the oils went missing. Oh, no. That's brutal. And that's tough, too, because oils are not cheap. Oils are an investment, that's for sure. I'm so sad to hear that. But, yes, I think you should get more. And honestly, here, Laughing Girl, here's something for you. Don't buy a full oil painting set. Just get either raw umber and white or get a black and a white. That way it can keep your cost down, and then you can practice working in that value study of the grisaille. And so that way you can keep your cost down. Just kind of do that. Only buy those colors. Only buy those limited color palettes. Work monochromatically and do that as well. Thank you guys so much. You guys are so kind. Thank you for subscribing. Thanks for following along. Ox Smells, thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed watching and painting along with us. Thank you guys so much. Laughing Girl, thanks for making me laugh a few times. Greatly appreciated it and really appreciate the subscription. Again, we're going to be getting a lot of our instructors on, doing different techniques, doing different methods, sharing their different wisdom and insight. But I hope you guys come back and watch as we paint again together. It's been a blast. I really appreciate it. I'm going to wrap up a little bit here in the next 10 to 15 minutes. But Ox Smells, Laughing Girl, thank you guys so much. And thank you for subscribing to the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. We greatly appreciate it, guys. Thank you all so much. And thanks for the comments and the laughter. That really makes the painting go by very fast, which is great. Yeah, see you soon. Thank you again. See, now I've got to come back in and darken this up a little bit. I talked about it, and then I got away from it. And I've got to fix that. I want to keep in mind my value comparison. I want to make sure my values, kind of bounce off each other. And I know that this seam here, the seam of this pant leg, really cast a little bit of a shadow on this inside leg. So even if this isn't exactly the way that I want it, I'm going to come in and really drop in some elements here, so that way I can see that that value contrast. Ah, thanks, Oxmo. I'm glad you learned something. We'll see you soon too. You have a wonderful evening. Get some good rest. Rest is important for sure. And I need to get some better rest. I've got 3 daughters and a 4th daughter on the way, and I don't see me getting good sleep for a long time. But you know what? The best bad sleep you can ever get. It is the best bad sleep ever. And so worth it. Thank you guys again for being a part of this and for joining us. What a wonderful experience. Okay. We're coming along, boy. We have gotten a lot of painting done today. Thank you guys so much. You guys have been a joy to be around. All the amazing comments, amazing students. It's so wonderful to see some of our in-person students jump in and watch. Thank you guys for being a part of the actual academy here and taking lessons and courses, coming and painting on a weekly basis with us. I think we're getting there. Really bring in some of these guys here. So if you've noticed, I've switched back to my smaller brush just because I'm making in some of these details. But then when I get to those larger areas, I'll drop in some of those larger areas, some of those larger values, and place them. But right now, there's some heavy folds that take place on this side of the pant leg. There's some heavy folds. And I want to make sure I get really good notes down on it. I want to make sure that I get it accurate because it's going to create that tension. If I don't get these folds correct, if I don't get the lowlights and highlights in these folds, the pant leg is going to flatten out. So this section here should be relatively flat. We talked about kind of the bulging of the pocket, right? We talked about the bulging of the pocket here because the hand is sitting inside that pocket. But there is a strong stretch of fabric here. This fabric really stretches and pulls. And so I've really got to make sure I get that stretch look, or else it's going to lose dimension. especially when I come back with my chroma, with my color. Because if I don't have that tension in that pant leg and that material, it'll just flatten out. And I don't want that. And so you can see even in my notes, my drawing notes, right? I have these heavy drawing notes in here. And these notes are reminders. Seth, make sure you stretch that pant leg. Make sure you stretch that material. Pull it across, pull it across. Those little notes help. And then I just continue those notes with my brush. And so as I come in, even if I come back to this tomorrow or the next day, and I layer on some of this work, you'll see that these notes help remind me of where I want to go with it. And I think that is something that a lot of people, could probably do more of, because even if that note's not exactly the way you want, you can come back in and fix it. You can keep working through it. And that's really, really, I think, helpful in that painting process. But guys and gals, people of all kinds and colors and everything else and whatever else we got, if you guys want to ask any questions, please feel free to ask as we work through this. I'm getting ready to wrap up, maybe another 5-10 minutes, and then we're going to call it a day. But I'm making some notes here. And I apologize for the brush sounds, but I always like to make, if you're a student of mine, you know that I make these brush sounds. You can feel the brush on the canvas. It just, when you make that sound, it just pops. For me, it does anyways. But I'm glad. I hope that we share a lot and learn a lot. I hope it's something that people are gaining some energy from and some positivity from. Painting should be fun. It should be enjoyable. It should be a good experience. Yes, it can be frustrating. Yes, it can be challenging. But boy, we get to create art. And isn't that a great thing? Isn't that awesome? I tell people all the time, I'm so incredibly fortunate, incredibly blessed, lucky, honored, whatever you want to call it, that this is what we get to do. We get to teach people how to paint and draw, do all these fun things, and express themselves. It's just amazing. It's just so much fun. How fortunate that we get to create. Now, as long as I just don't mess this painting up with my daughter. That's the biggest fear I've got, right, guys? I don't want to mess this one up. If you can't tell by the look in her face, I'll show you. She's a fierce one. She's got that energy, man. She will let me know, Daddy, that does not look anything like me. Oh, thanks, honey. She's not afraid to, and I love it. I love that she's fierce. All my daughters are fierce, and I'm very proud of that. Very proud of the fact that their mother's a strong woman. Their grandmothers are strong women. Their great-grandmothers were strong women. And boy, am I honored and lucky that I get to have 4 daughters that I hope are raised to be strong women. And that is one of the greatest things in the world. And I love it. I love that she's intense. I love it that she stands up. And anybody that knows her, I think if there's anybody here that knows her, they will tell you that is true. She does not hesitate to let you know how she feels. And I love it. You should see some of her paintings. I'll have to bring some of her paintings here. It's amazing. She expresses herself really well through the painting process. Well, guys, we're going to wrap this up for today. Thank you for joining. Sorry I get so sentimental. Anytime I start talking about my daughters, boy, you'll start seeing some tears fly on that. I promise you that. But I hope I didn't get too personal with you guys. Hopefully you enjoy sharing some of that insight, some of the painting techniques. I love all the questions. You guys are phenomenal. I can't thank you guys enough for joining the Visual Arts Academy and Studio live feed as we share painting techniques, tips, and tricks. We share an art experience together. We share a creative experience together. I hope you guys will join us next time. If you have any questions, email us, visit our website, visit our social media pages and outlets, and we will see you guys soon. Thanks for painting with me today. Talk to you soon. Take care, everyone.